going into November, right? This is when conventionally we would all say these are going to be the dates with the most activity. Um,
Yep.
I every year I always like to look at the dates that everyone has kind of programmed everyone to really look forward to every year.
Sure.
But let's go ahead and look at like the first 5 days of November. Uh,
Yep. Yeah, I mean, once again, it's pretty much temperature related. Although, I mean, November, I will say November 1st was a pretty good day, and I wouldn't say temperatures were ideal, but I also would say that was it, and I said this even back on the Exodus podcast before. Sometimes these temperatures aren't exactly like, for instance, what it even the date and the temperature, given the time the weather comes in that. Sometimes it's a little bit different than what it looks. I remember the one year, I think it was maybe 2022. I think it was November 12th was one of the better days we had, and I shot a buck that day. And I remember, it didn't show right because at midnight the temperatures were like 60 degrees, but then by uh 10 or 11 in the morning it was nearly the 30s or whatever. So when this, when I'm looking, this isn't more like me watching the temperature all throughout the day. This is at whatever point of the day, whether it's midnight, as soon as that date struck, it could have been 80 degrees, but it could be 30 or whatever. So where I'm getting to is, even though we look on November 1st here and it does not show temperatures being superb and we had really good movement, it might have been just given the fact that as soon as November 1st at midnight hit, it could have been 43 degrees or whatever then, or 60, whatever, and then drop throughout the day.
mhm.
And that might be why we had such great movement, because we definitely had a front coming in, because we can see a huge change in those low temperatures coming ahead, or at least for a couple days. But
Mhm.
the movement was still pretty good, but it didn't quite uh, hold up to what some of those days were in October.
Yeah, second and third were good.
Yep.
We always got to look at November 7th. That's a very popular date
Yeah.
uh, from Boone and Crockett Records and a lot of really influential hunters over the years. In the 30s, pretty
Yeah.
pretty solid day. Pretty solid day.
And I totally wouldn't tell anyone, like, November 7th can be, really, this is something what I see every year. It seems like no matter what, it goes in waves. Certainly the temperature has an effect in it, but I always see a lot of years where it seems like November will come in good, and then it'll start to lull a little bit, maybe exactly what we're seeing here. Then I'll see a little bit of a spike between like the 7th and the 10th. It just seems to be like a roller coaster ride sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, November is not always just great every day, like in that early part, but it has its highs and lows. But yeah, I once again, November 7th, we had those lows in the 30s, and overall, I mean, that was the best one of the better days we had in earlier part of November.
Yeah. I shot a buck on November 9th, which I need to pay closer attention to, what were the dates in Illinois. And I would say you guys are
Sure.
probably maybe a day or day and a half behind us in terms of
Yep.
temperature.
Yep.
So it's fun to kind of compare that. And I think that's something important for people to know if they're listening to this in Wisconsin or Minnesota or Illinois or Kentucky or Ohio or something like that, and kind of estimate how far ahead or potentially behind if you're, east of Pennsylvania.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, you look once again though, like, every time the temperature spiked in that earlier November period, and you look at
Mhm.
that low temperature, and and last year, we never actually had what I call a classic day, where we had, uh at least I don't think, during the rut, where we had what I call a 30-30 day, where you even have highs in the 30s and lows in the 30s, and those are those days, like, I would recommend sitting all day. But a lot of these really good days we had last year, we had highs in the 50s, but we had lows in the 30s or 20s, and those were still great days. I've said this before too, a lot of times in the woods, and especially if you're like even on a north or east slope, those cool temperatures will hold in the woods longer than they will, like, if you're, in town or walking the streets, or you're out in the field, or, on a south facing slope, whatever, like temperature, um, can be, can be completely different from certain different types of areas that you're in. So I'm sure in the woods, you get a good 28-degree morning. It's going to be a while usually till it warms up, and it's just having those right temperatures to keep those bucks cool and wanting to move. Like really, that's all it boils down to.
Yeah. So I threw this, like I said, I threw this in AI, and there was an interesting chart. I'm going to pull it up here in a second. Of it categorized it by, I think it was just total buck pictures, not mature buck pictures. And I'm
Hmm.
going to throw it up here on the screen for you to look at too here in a second. Here we go. Okay, 1 second here. And I think you might find this interesting. Here we go.
Yeah, I
Okay.
gotta get close with my
Yeah.
phone here. Yep.
So this was moon phase distribution 2024 trail camera data. And this was AI too, so I did not
Yeah,
I did not fact check this. So,
that's all
any,
right.
but I found this to be really crazy. Of these were the moon phases with the most buck activity.
Yeah, what's it saying there?
WC and WG.
Yeah, on my phone it's not showing at all, but so I think that goes according to what I thought. Looking at looking at, although I will say, what's it look like? The one, is that saying 40 some percent
Yep,
for
40 and then 48.
and then the other phases there, it didn't hardly do nothing.
Yeah, so waxing had 40%, waning had 48, and then all the other ones were like 1.3, 1.3, 2.7, 2.7, 4%. Or yeah,
Wow.
4%.
And
So
that
the
that's
new moon had 4%, the full moon had 2.7.
so yeah, and well, that's odd though, because so when we look here in the at least the mid-October period, and this is why I say just the mid-October full moon, but
Mhm.
it's saying that most of the time we had a full moon, which there should have been three of them throughout this study potentially. We
Yeah,
didn't have much movement, right?
correct. But the other thing too is how the spreadsheet is. There's also a lot more waning and waxing days too, to where I think this can get skewed
Sure,
pretty
yeah.
easily.
Yeah, well, and who knows? But no, my point is and as I, do this every year on these podcasts and explain this information, it's you're always going to see some differences every year, but there's also things like I said, for some reason we get that mid-October full moon, or late October full moon. There's certain things every year where you'll find that are also like just I almost always see an increase, and maybe it's not. If you looked at the moon, 12 months out of the year, you might not see it having as much of an impact. But
The weather's
there,
king.
yeah, exactly, especially the temperature.
Yeah.
But I will say, if you don't mind diving into November here, I do want to look, because when we had the full moon here in November, we had a pretty good spike too. So
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
when I talk about the full moon, and this is once again, I see this, more so during the rut than, you know, because I'm a little concerned, I will say, this year with that full moon being early October. I don't know if it will have as much of an effect, but you get that full moon during the rut, and I've done this in other years. I wish I would have had that data for you from before, but I can promise people full moon during the rut, usually days you want to hunt.
Dark to dark.
I would totally consider it. Yep, because
Dark to,
we
what if it's high of 70, low of 55?
okay, maybe not dark to dark that day. Be do You might want to be thinking water, or some cooler temperatures, and maybe or where it's cooler, and possibly shorten, or maybe 2 3 hour morning sit, and same for the afternoon. But then again, I'm you just, especially, I will also say this, like, a lot of hunters out there, they don't have the flexibility in their work life and their family
Yeah.
life. And I mean, I would never want to discourage people to be like, I have 1 week vacation this year. the weather's not looking that good, I might just hunt a little bit. Like if that was the case, I totally recommend hunting as much as you can because you have a limited amount of time. But for the people that have that flexibility, that's when you can really take advantage of, you know what, I don't have to hunt today, or I don't have to sit all day because in 2 more days it looks really good and I can take advantage of that. So it just depends on, your lifestyle, your work schedule and all that stuff.